Everyone, welcome back to the SDG Media Zone. We're coming to you live from the UN headquarters in New York during the 80th UN General Assembly. Our next session is Fueling the Future, Hoops, Agri-Food Systems, and Youth-Driven Change, and I'm pleased to pass it to our moderator to kick it off.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining our session at the SDG Media Zone. My name is Melissa June Rowley, and also I just want to say a special thanks for trekking out in the rain and the humidity. I'm about as wet as it is out there just from walking to get here, so thank you so much for being here. I'm going to get right into introducing our panelists into the conversation since we don't have too much time. Thank you to our Goodwill ambassadors, the Harlem Globetrotters. We got Brawley Chisholm, Latif Jet Rivers, and then we've got, I'm going to go down here, Maximo Torero Collin, Chief Economist of the FAO, and Monique Coleman, actress, dancer, entrepreneur, youth advocate, and so much more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Maximo, being the economist's brain, I'm going to start with you. So there are 1.3 billion young people in the world. Given that stat and given what's happening in agriculture and food and the need for food security, do you have any data or insights on what kind of participation we need from the youth and what kind of support needs to actually uplift them so that they're in a good position to contribute to the agri-food system?
So the challenge is big and the urgency is huge. So everybody needs to support in this. It's not just an issue of money, it's also an issue of attitude and action. And what we are trying to do is to try to accelerate the process so that we can reduce hunger in the world, and especially that we can improve access to healthy diets in the world. And here is where all the actions have a role to play. Of course, farmers, producers have to produce more, but they have to use the natural resources more efficiently, so produce more with less. Private sector has to play a huge role because farmers are private sector also, and private sector companies have to play a role. The financing institutions have to play a role. They have to de-risk the private sector to come in. Institutions like FAO has to create public goods that will also help to facilitate and to, what I call is, open the dark room that we have where we don't know where to go because we don't have the data and the information that allow us to create and to build the correct policies to move out. So our job is to bring that data, that information, that technical assistance to open and to create that light so that we can better design our policies. So governments, international organizations, financial institutions, and the youth, of course, and women have to play a crucial role because they could be the motors of dynamism and the motors of accelerating the process together with all the generations. This is not an issue of just the youth or the old people, it's an issue of all the generations, wherever we are to try to create the change.
Thank you. I love the way economists think. I mean, I think every single, not just government agency or organization should have an expert economist, but any single organization in general, company, initiative, nonprofit. Thank you for that insight. Monique, I'm going to go to you next. So we actually go way back. We met in 2013. It was 13-ish. We Are Family Foundation, 3.Dash. From what I know of you, you're so not just out there advocating for youth publicly. You're in it. You're on the front lines with them. You're in conversations with them. You're mentoring them. From what you've observed or listened to among some of the youth that you mentor and work with, do they have any concerns around health and food? And are they, I mean, obviously young people are so connected and they're so well versed. Are you hearing anything specifically around food or agriculture and their interest in it?
That's a great question. I think it's hard to answer that completely directly simply because looking at it through a global lens and how different things are for us here specifically in the United States, and the fact that I think a lot of young people don't have a direct relationship with food and understanding where it comes from, and the fact that it grows out of the ground and off of trees, and that there's a dynamic relationship that we can have, which is with a more sustainable lens and more of a regenerative lens, even more than sustainability. But I will say that I think young people are agents of change. As far as I'm concerned, they are one of the greatest agents of change on our planet, and I think that investing in their ideas and really having conversations with them about how they feel about the future is something that we can do. But as far as like how they're feeling, I think there's just an overarching sense of dismay, I think, at times in terms of what is it that they can actually do to help secure a future.
Yeah. That seems to be, well, it's one of the themes I'm hearing during UNGA and Climate Week, and we'll get to what some of the solutions might be in a second. But I want to go next to our Harlem Globetrotters over here on the court. So, with your general lives and livelihoods as athletes, as people that are really in tune with their bodies and their health, and I would guess food and what you're putting in your body, and as ambassadors for this cause, what do you think can help can help kind of counter some of that dismay that Monique was just mentioning? Because it's a global issue. Everybody's got access to the crises that are going on right now. What do you guys think about how we can keep our young people in a positive direction and to just keep pushing forward?
Well, I think it's an education thing. For me, I know growing up, at first, I played sports my whole life, but at first, I wasn't really thinking about, what I'm putting into my body. But as I got older, I learned more, and I realized that what I eat affects how I move, how I think, the amount of rest I'm able to get. But I had to learn that, So I think that it's education-based, and the more we can get that word out, especially to the youth, because the youth has the power to change the world, So as much as we can get the word out and get that education out, I think that's the best thing that we can do. Because even myself as an adult man, I didn't realize how important it was until I learned how important it was. So.
Thank you. So Brawley, please feel free to add on to that. But also, I'm just wondering, just in your experience, when you're meeting kids, whether you're talking about food, I think it's kind of unusual to you're playing and then a kid comes up to you, hey, I want to talk about food and agriculture, right? So have you seen in your experience any entry points to get young people kind of intrigued about the education behind things and get them interested in it as they're watching you perform and play out your passion?
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I'm honored to be here today because of FAO, 80 years of just success of making sure everybody is knowledgeable about food, and the Harlem Globetrotters 100 years. And with that together, it makes it special. To answer your question, I feel like no kid left behind, and you never know whose life you're changing. And I think it's very important to treat kids as you would treat yourselves and adults, because kids are very smart. So I think they can sense fabrication from a mile away. So the more you're honest with them, as I am, about just knowledge, information about sports and health, I think that's very important. And a lot of kids, what they're marketed in media and from people that aren't knowledgeable about what they're feeding them, just push them back maybe decades and decades if they're not knowledgeable about what they're putting in their bodies. I think it's very, very important. And as you see me and Latif right here, we're ambassadors of fitness while we're in sweatpants and T-shirts to show that fitness is important. Take care of your body. Health is wealth. And we want to keep moving forward with that message.
Yeah. Thank you. Health is wealth. So speaking of wealth, I'm going to turn to our economist over here. As someone who is a systems thinker, who sees kind of the way different ecosystems work and where gaps are when it comes to data, communication, if you're talking to certain ecosystems, whether it's financial institutions, health organizations, government agencies, where do you think, are there any gaps in particular that you're seeing that need to be kind of addressed? I mean, they all need to be addressed immediately, I would assume, but are there anything that you see as this is the biggest gap? We can't make progress unless this is addressed right now.
No, look. The problem that we face is what I call coordination failure.
What was that?
Coordination failure.
Coordination
Oh,
failure.
I thought you said colonization failure.
No,
okay.
not colonization.
That's a whole other panel, kind of.
And the issue is basically that many of the international organizations and the agencies and the financial institutions, they have their own objectives and their own goals. And not necessarily are aligned to what countries need and what not countries need to do. So what is the challenge? The challenge is that we know many things that work and can help to resolve problems. We know the needs of the countries. For example, the region that has the biggest number of food insecure people, which is Africa, not the number but the prevalence of food insecurity, which is Africa. We know exactly where the problems are. And they have a very good institutionality, which is the CARAP framework, to try to resolve their problems. They know what they need. And then you have the world of financial organizations that not necessarily are responding to those needs and to those requirements. So where we need to work very hard, and that's also part of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty of the G20 of Brazil, is trying to bring these pieces together. So what we have in that alliance is we have the pillar of knowledge, which we call the policy basket, so what works and where it works. We have the pillar of financing, which is not asking necessarily for more money, but to coordinate better the money that we have in the financial organizations to respond to those policy baskets that we know that work and resolve the problem and which countries are willing to implement. And then we have the action at the country level. So that is the type of solutions that we need to bring together to gain synergies and efficiency. And in the world that we are living today, where money is a lot more restrictive, and there is a lot of significant cuts in ODA in the world, it's very important that this happens now. So we need to look at the other side of the coin and look at how we can gain efficiencies, how we can make countries use their money more efficiently, but how the money that comes to those countries, which in many cases is just loans, needs to be used effectively in what they really need to resolve the problems with the practices and the actions that we know that has been tested and work in the future. So that's the change that we're looking for.
Efficiency is hard, though, especially for governments.
No, I disagree. I think governments can be super efficient. I think the incentives need to be aligned. Of course, there is politics, and politics are okay. It's part of the world. You have to live with politics. But the problem is you have to work with the governments and help the government with evidence and data and information so that they can prioritize. And then, of course, politics will happen, but will happen in the top 10 investments, but won't happen in the 1,000 or 1 million investments. That's what we need to change. Right now, we are targeting investments which are very far from the need. And that prioritization needs to change.
Targeting investments far from the need? Is that what you just said? Yeah.
Sorry?
Did you say we're targeting investments far from the need?
We are targeting investments which are not necessarily what the countries need.
Got it. Thank you. Very important data point, very important insight. So he's elaborating on data and the importance of making this data known so these countries know what to do. And data is important, but in my opinion, data can only go so far. We need storytelling, we need culture, we need engagement, we need something that people want to be pulled into, or that no matter what, they can't help but be pulled into it. As an entertainer, your whole career, what do you think, have you seen anything really work, like penetrate, not just the minds of children, but just, throughout your work, any other kinds of, break down walls in ways that you didn't think previously messages weren't getting through?
Sure. I mean, I think that just art in general is the power and the potential of what art allows us to do. Like you said, we can listen to the numbers, we can understand the issues, but unless you actually are impacting the hearts and minds of people, and you are helping people to understand that there's an individual on the other side of each of these data points, and that the money that we're talking about is for something that is actually readily can be available to us, to everyone, if we had the will. I think that storytelling allows for us to not just reflect humanity back to itself, but also to demonstrate what our potential is by creating work that is aspirational and also highlights the issues that are there. And just one point I wanted to make just about what we were talking about earlier and young people is that as someone, I was the first ever United Nations Youth Champion for the International Year of Youth, and I am now a champion for FAO as well. And one thing that I'm really concerned with is how much we are outsourcing our responsibility to young people. As much as I see young people as being agents of change, I also think that there is so much stress and pressure. They're not the ones with money. They're not the ones who are able to make these decisions for themselves on behalf of themselves. That is our responsibility. So it doesn't matter if I want to eat the healthy food, if I don't have access, or if the people in my community are not able to garner around that, then there's not much that young person can actually do other than suffer. And so I do think that film, TV, I'm actually a part of a project called Asali, Power of the Pollinators. It's a short film that was screened for World Bee Day in partnership with FAO. And that, I think, is a perfect example. It's I think it has the potential of like a Captain America for this generation. I think, finding a way to create things that feel engaging and inspiring and open our hearts and our minds to what is actually happening so that we care about one another, because we see that we can reverse things when we care about the people that the injustice is happening to. And so I think when we start caring about, everyone and what it looks like to not have access, then we will make changes.
Yes,
I'm trying to say that the nicest way I can. Yeah.
Yes. No, I totally hear you. And there's the economic side of things, which we need. We will not survive as a society without understanding our economies. And I actually think, a number of our leaders don't, but we don't need to get into that right now. We have enough experts in the world who do. We have enough people like this gentleman right here who understands the economy, where the gaps are. We have enough people who are harnessing culture and their influence to instigate positive social change. And we also have people who are goodwill ambassadors who are using their own platforms and their passion for sports and their passion for food and people to have access to get it out there. You two as goodwill ambassadors for this cause, how long have you been goodwill ambassadors now?
So I've been with the world famous Harlem Globetrotters for 11 years, but I mean, it's embedded in me. My family does a lot of community work, so even before I became a Globetrotter, I feel like I was a goodwill ambassador. I mean, we've done a lot of work in the community in terms of feeding the homeless, and that's something that I still do to this day, even with the platform I have now. So.
Yeah. So in your experience, and both of you please feel free to address this question, in your experience, whether it was growing up, the way that you just shared how you grew up and kind of you were always a goodwill ambassador at heart, and then now with your role as official goodwill ambassadors and your role with Harlem Globetrotters, have you ever experienced a moment where you're talking to not just a young person, but the mission has to be intergenerational. We can't be like, young people, you're going to be left with this. Here, do something. It has to be intergenerational. Have you seen anything happen in your engagement with different people, whether it's around food or whether it's around something else, where you've seen just the power for something to shift, for them to for the education to get through, or for people to take an interest, and for people to really feel seen at the same time?
I'm really fortunate. Been with the Globetrotters for 16 seasons, been over 60 countries, all 50 states. And what I realized by traveling the world is that we separate ourselves. And with religion, ethnicities, culture, it's really all one. We all have to just come together. And when I realized, if you've ever been to a Globetrotter game, we all know our spinning the ball in the finger is our trademark. When we spin the ball, we're being Rome, like Maximo. I've been to Rome, and I don't know Italian from a can of paint, right? But the one thing that's special about communication is nonverbal communication. So the more we can do that, is the more we can communicate with the world. Like if I spin the ball, I went to a children's hospital, and before I went into the room, I had a chance to spin the ball in this kid's finger at a cancer hospital. When I left the room, the dad came out following me. He started crying, saying, "Hey, I haven't seen my daughter cry. I haven't seen my daughter smile in months." So things like that changed my life, and I know I'm doing God's work by changing other people's lives. But to also answer your question, I think it's just important to just believe in the youth, believe and have them always have hope. I don't know if anybody here ever been hopeless, but I'm from the South Bronx. And I never knew I'd be in the spot I am today. Right now, I always try to stay present. And right now, I'm at the UN, right, from the South Bronx, and I never thought I'd be here. But it's not about that. It's about being the change I want to see. And I think if we all come together like we are now, spreading the word, spreading the knowledge that kids can have more hope, I think that we'll go a long way.
And quickly to add on to what Brawley said, because we have this platform, because we are who we are, I think we're the perfect people to, deliver that message, because there are kids who look up to us. And, I mean, those kids have parents who bring them to the games. And like you said, the parents are the ones with the access. Yeah. So if we can tap into the parents, then we can reach the kids as well.
Yes. Thank you. So we're almost out of time, but I would love for each of you to just share there's one key message you want not only the people in this room, because we're hoping that this conversation ripples far beyond this room, one message that you want people to think about, understand, and take to other people that they know that are doing anything around food security, young people, intergenerational access to some of these crises that we're dealing with, and to the solutions. Just one thing that you want people to know.
So for me, the important issue is not to complain, to think carefully and to act and do what you can do in your hands. So when we talk with the youth, always my view with them, in FAO we have a huge program with youth and women that the Director General put forward since he became director of the office. And the idea, and we always tell them the same, this is not an issue of getting a political job, this is not an issue of getting a voice in a UN conference. Do what you can do and contribute to what we have to achieve, which is achieving zero hunger. Because it can be achieved. Could be it's not in 2030, but we can try, and let's try to work together on that one.
I think that was a great message. I would just add by saying, yeah, do what you can with what you have and who you are. You don't have to become or someone else or do something else. I'm, an actress, but I deeply care about young people and I deeply care about our future. And I think when it comes to food security, and it's just first and foremost just a conversation that needs to be had. And like you were saying earlier, that I think there's a really big role that film, television, and media can really play to be a part of it. But obviously convening in moments like this, but then going out and actually, like the Globetrotters are doing the actual physical work of making sure that food gets where it needs to go.
Yeah, exactly. It's just scratching the surface, because if we can get people with backgrounds as diverse as this panel, economics, entertainment, sports, if we can get in more rooms together on a regular basis and form more unlikely alliances, talk with sectors and industries and fields that we don't normally talk to, we're much better off. Really quickly, you both kind of shared, I think, the point that touched on this question, but if there's anything else that you'd like to add just about food, youth, this mission, what you'd like to see people take away from today.
I would say control what you could control. The simplest gestures matter, and don't be so anxious to think you can save the world in one day. It takes days and days and generations, but if you can do what you can do, that's all the world can ask for.
Yeah, I feel like control what you can control, or do what you can with what you have, is such a great message, because, so many people have different circumstances, and sometimes you may not have as much access as the next person, or sometimes you may not have access at all. But it's important to be conscious of it. If you're conscious of it, even though you may not have as much as the next person has, you can make a conscious decision on, whether to eat healthy, or, take a second and think about what you're going to get for your kids, or, just spreading the word in general. So I think that's a really good message.
You can control. It seems so simple, but it's so easy to forget when we're just dealing with life and stress and pressures. But we're all in this together, so I think that's another thing. None of us have to deal with doing these things alone. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for the conversation.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.